What do you think of when you think of a hero? You probably think of armour and weapons and bravery. But there is another way to be a hero. How about using music? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and yes, today you've probably guessed we are going to be doing another Talisman 4th Revised Edition from Fantasy Flight, this edition. A character guide, and this time we're going to be taking a look at the Minstrel. Now we have done a few other character guides. We've done the Sorceress, we've done the Ghoul, and we've done the Troll. But this is the turn of the Minstrel. We've also done the base game, which is what I'm holding here. It's got a lot of stuff in there now. The base game review, and we've also done all of the other expansions as well. That's the corner expansions and the mini expansions and the mini expansions. So you can check those out on our YouTube channel maybe before you want to get into this, because if you don't know the basic rules, I'm not going to be explaining them here. This is a hints and tip character guide to help you kind of win, to help you claim the crown of command. Maybe I could help to talk as well. Anyway, let's take a look at the Minstrel. Talisman 4th edition revised. Now this is all going to be talking about the base game, so if you're playing with other expansions, some of it may not kind of tie in, because I thought, well, maybe not everybody's got all the expansions. I thought we'd go through the base game characters and basically describe it using, if I'm mentioning adventure cards, it's going to be always from the base game. So let's take a look at the Minstrel. Well, the Minstrel starts in the tavern, as you'd probably expect. Alignment is good, strength is 2, craft is 4, fate is 5, and gold is 1. Special abilities, you get 3 special abilities with the Minstrel. You get animals, let's go through them, I'll just quickly go through them. Number 1 is animals and dragons will not attack you, though you may choose to attack them. Number 2, if you do not attack an animal, you may attempt to charm it. To do so, you roll 1 die, and then if you roll a higher than the animal's strength, it joins you as a follower and adds its strength to yours in battle, and you may only use 1 charmed animal per battle. And number 3, you may take the maiden and princess from a character that you land on. So, the Minstrel's strength lies in the affinity he has with animals and dragons, but not having these types of animals and dragons attack you, you have a much better chance of surviving early on, because in Talisman, as you probably know if you've been playing it, Talisman can be fairly brutal. You can lose your lives pretty quickly, and then if you lose all of your lives, you regenerate into a different character. Now obviously that means you're still in the game, but what it means is if you've been playing for a couple of hours, it's like, oh no, I've got to start from scratch again. So you kind of want to avoid losing your characters. So this is a good way. Obviously, early on in the game, if you draw from the adventure deck some creatures, some monsters, some enemies, the animal type of enemy and also the dragon type of enemy will not attack you, and because your starting strength is only 2, and that's pretty low down. There are some enemies that have a higher strength than you, so you've probably got a less chance of winning against them, fighting them and actually killing them. And you have a starting total of 5 fate. Now that is a massive strength as well, because fate means that you can re-roll a die if you don't like the results. So say you move and you want a 3 because you want to go to a specific space and you get a 4, then you can pay a fate and you can re-roll that die, but you must accept what it says the second time you roll it. Equally, if you're rolling in battle and you roll a die and it comes out as a 1 and you wanted obviously 2 or anything higher, you can pay a fate and re-roll that die. So if you've got 5, I think that's the most that any character starts with, then you've got a good chance you've already got a slight advantage over other characters. So let's go through the special abilities in a bit more detail. So number 1, as we said, animals and dragons will not attack you, although you may choose to attack them. Now that is very handy, considering that dragons have a strength of 7. Now the way combat works is you will be rolling a die for each, well, another player will roll a die for the monster or enemy, so in this case it would be a dragon, and then adding that to its strength. So if it rolled a 6, obviously it would have a total of 13 because it has a base strength of 7. Now you start off with 2, so obviously if you roll a 6 you're still going to lose, you're going to get 8, so there's no way you can fight a dragon. But because dragons won't attack you, then you're safe, and believe you me, that can really help out. And animals, their strength ranges from 1 to 4. So why is that useful? Well, out of 104 base game adventure cards, there are only 29 enemy cards. Now I didn't know that until I started doing this, and you kind of think, well, that doesn't seem that many, that much that you're going to get attacked, certainly if you're just playing with the base game adventure cards. Out of the 29 enemy cards, there are 7 animal enemies and 3 dragons. For those of you who don't know, the enemy cards, they are split into different types. You've got monsters, you've got spirits, you've got dragons, you've got, what else? Oh yeah, the animals, obviously. So there are different types. So it only applies to the animals and dragons where they don't attack you. So, as I say, there are 7 animal enemies and 3 dragons. So you are safe from 2.9% of enemies throughout the game. That's if you just play with the base game. Now, as you become more powerful and you increase your strength, and you might have a weapon to help you out as well, yes, that does, you know, you're not so afraid of strength-based animals or creatures or enemies. But early on in the game, obviously, if you have only got a strength of 2 and then you pull a monster, a creature that has got a 5, then yeah, you don't want that attacking you because you've got a less chance of beating it. So therefore, to have the fact that animals and certainly dragons not attacking you is a good thing. So, you may be unlucky and get there's only 3 dragons in the base game, so you might be unlucky and you might be the one that draws. You draw a dragon and you don't want to be fighting that. So you probably want to choose to actually, just not let it attack you. So that leads on to the second ability, which is if you do not attack an animal, you may attempt to charm it. To do so, you roll 1 die, and if you roll higher than the animal's strength, it joins you as a follower and adds its strength to your strength. So you may do this, you may only use one of these once per battle. So basically what that means is you charm an animal of 3, 4 and 5. That makes a massive difference to your starting, if you've got a starting strength of 2. So for example, if you were to, there's a boar that has a strength of 1. So if you attempt to charm it, you need a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to actually charm it. Then you would take it and add it. Now early on you might think, well, what does 1 strength make a difference? Well, it can make a difference because then you'll have a total of 3 when you're in combat, or battle I should say, where you use strength to fight. Now your craft is 4, so if you were to meet spirits or anything that uses craft to fight you, you've got a better chance, because you've got a starting craft of 4. Obviously you can have magical objects that will help you increase your craft or indeed increase your strength, but early on in the game you start out, you don't have anything. So basically what you want to do is you want to charm as many animals as you possibly can. And remember, you do have 5 fate, so if you attempt to charm, I would keep all my fate just for the charm really. I wouldn't re-roll any movement. I would use them on my fate, because if I've got, say, an animal that has a 3 strength and you roll a 2, I would spend a fate definitely to then re-roll to get a 4, 5 or 6, because if you had a 3 adding to your 2, that's 5, and you imagine a dragon's 7, so if you did come across 7, you've got a much better chance of beating the dragon. Also, you always have the charmed animal. So even if you go into battle and you lose a life, you still have your animal. That animal doesn't die. So it's definitely worth having it. You can only use 1, so you could have several that are charmed, but you can only use 1 in that battle. So it's really handy. And there are some aspects where you might be forced to lose a follower. They become your followers, so they are technically a follower. And you could just give away a boar, which is strength 1, because presumably if you've got more followers that you've charmed, then yeah, you can afford to lose a few followers. So I would definitely recommend that. And it also, number 3, is you may take the maiden and princess from a character that you land on. So this does depend though on the followers, those followers coming out of the deck. So there's less chance that you'll be using this ability. But if they do come out and you haven't, you're the one that doesn't draw them when you land on a space and it says to draw an adventure card, then yeah, you might want to spend a couple of goes targeting that. Because for the Maiden, it adds 2 to your craft permanently as long as you have the Maiden as your follower. So that's not just in psychic combat, that's actually just all the time. So if you're doing any check that you need to roll and you're using craft, then that will add to your craft base value. So when you start out, you start with craft 4. Obviously if you had the Maiden with you, you'd get an extra 2, which means you can have your full complement of spells, of 3. Whereas obviously if you've got 4, you can only have 2 spells, as far as I can remember. Might need to double check that. But obviously the more craft, the better. Because ultimately that's what you want to do. You want to be building up your craft and you want to be building up your strength. You've probably got more chance of building up your craft because you start with 2 more than your strength. And the princess, yes, you may want to grab the princess as well, or nick her off somebody, because you can heal up to 2 lives per visit at the castle, which is in the middle region, for free. And that's always good because sometimes you might not have any gold and you might then need to actually heal up your lives. So you can just, if you've got the princess, you can do that. And you can also exchange the princess for 3 gold at the castle. If you do this, you must place her on the discard pile. So basically, if you need cash and you think, well, I don't need her ability of healing up for free, then you can just cash her in for gold, and then obviously you might want to buy a mule or something that that will actually benefit you as well. So what tactic to use then? Well, I would suggest that you draw as many adventure cards as possible to try and get those animal cards, animal enemies, so you can use your charm ability, because remember there are only 7 of these that you'll be able to charm. So if there's 7 out of 104 cards, that is a lot of adventure cards that you need to be drawing. And remember, your other players that you're playing with, they have a chance equally of getting those creatures, and they're just going to be killing them. They're going to be wanting them as trophies, because obviously the more trophies you collect, once you get 7 of either craft or strength, you can cash them in to get either a craft or strength. So everybody does want to be killing enemies, and you want to be charming them though, because they're going to be useful for you to add their strength to your strength in a combat battle, or in a battle I should say. So the other thing is that although you may get the other, because there's 29 enemies, of which 7 are animals, and there are 3 dragons, at least you won't get attacked by the dragons, so there's less, so there's more chance you're going to survive when you actually do have an enemy. And yes, you're going to be picking other things that you can't charm, like monsters or like spirits. But if it's a spirit, then obviously you've got a better chance anyway, because you've got a craft of 4. Now that's kind of where your tactics come in really. You want to be trying to charm animals, and obviously if the maiden and the princess do come out, you want to kind of be trying to get those as followers as well. A downside to the minstrel, well, you don't get any spells to start with. I always think spells, if you start with a spell, that gives those characters a slight edge, because who knows what that spell is, and it might be really useful early on in the game. So you don't get any spells, even though you do start with a craft 4, so you can actually have a spell, because you need a certain amount of craft to actually be able to cast a spell. And the strength is only 2, so obviously that is a downside if you come up against non-animals and dragons, I should say, because you will have to fight them as normal. Now, there are favourable places on the board for good characters. The outer region, if you go to the chapel, if you are good, you either heal up to your life value for free, and in this case it's 4, so if you were down to 2, you could just go up there and you could just heal right back up to 4. Or you can pray by rolling 1 die, and if you do so, you will 1 to 4 you'll get ignored, 5 you'll gain a life, 6 you'll gain a spell. So that's a good place to go there if you do want to start having spells, because you're not really going to lose anything. The worst that can happen is you're going to be ignored. But remember, you have got 5 fates, so you might want to use a fate to re-roll there to try and get yourself a spell. The Crags. If you roll 1 die, if you roll a 1, you're attacked by a spirit craft 4, but remember you're on 4 already, so you've got an equal chance there of beating it. 2 to 3, you're lost for a turn. That's no big deal, you'll just lose a turn. 4 to 5, you're safe. So again, it's kind of like you're not losing a turn, but it's just like, oh well, nothing happened, so at least you're not getting damaged. And 6, this is the crucial thing why you should be going to the Crags, is that a barbarian leads you out and you gain a strength. Now that's what you want to do, because you're only on 2 to begin with. You do want to be boosting up your strength, because you don't want to be vulnerable to strength attacks from either other characters, other players, or from other enemies that use strength. And forest is always good. You roll 1 die. Again, it's similar to the Crags, but the changes are, if you roll a 1, instead of you're fighting something with a craft of 4, you're actually fighting something with a strength of 4. Now that could be slightly tricky, because obviously your strength is only 2, but the reward is that if you roll a 6, you gain a craft. And again, it's they're kind of a cheap, hopefully a quick way of gaining craft. So the Crags and the forest do similar things, but the rewards are slightly different. It's either a strength or a craft. Go to the city. Now, if you go to the Enchantress, you can gain craft or strength, but be warned, because if you roll a 1, you are turned into a slimy little toad for 3 turns. And that isn't brilliant, because it means you are very vulnerable to attacks from other characters, and it means if you've been collecting weapons and magical objects and whatever, you have to drop them all on that space, and that means they're open for other people to land on that space and then grab those objects, and of course they're the ones that are going to help you power up. Number 2, lose 1 strength. Number 3, lose a craft. If you roll a 4, you gain a craft. If you roll a 5, you gain a strength. And if you gain a 6, you gain a spell. So basically 1 to 3 is bad, 4, 5 and 6 is good. So you kind of got a 50-50 chance. Remember, if you have fate, and we do start as a minstrel with 5 fate, again, it's probably worth dipping in there a couple of times to boost up your craft and strength, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do. You're trying to get your strength and craft up to at least 10 to help you in the latter stages of the game. And there are other places that are favourable for good characters, the Rune Ruins and also the Oasis. Now, you draw two adventure cards in one go at those spaces. So obviously, if you're trying to get those animal cards to charm them, and there's only 7 out of 104 cards, then you want to be drawing as many adventure cards as possible. Now, the Ruins is in the outer region, so it's easier to get to, so that's probably one you want to target early on, just kind of hop around trying to get those 2 cards in one go. Or if you do cross into the middle region, it's slightly more dangerous up there, especially early on in the game. You want to be going to the Oasis because, again, you'll be drawing 2 cards in one go. And also the Hidden Valley, you'll be drawing 3 adventure cards in one go as well. So that's kind of, again, that's also in the middle region. And the outer region you want to avoid. So places to avoid if you're good is the graveyard. If you're good, you automatically lose a life, and nobody wants that. The best route to go is going to be going to the craft area, because you'll be probably boosting up your craft because you start with 4. That's not always the case, but you can concentrate craft because it's sort of easier when you have a lot of craft to gain craft. So I probably recommend that you go to the mines, and the mines is you roll 3 dice and then you subtract your craft from the total, and then you move directly to wherever it says. You want to be going for 0 because you want to be staying on the mine. So the higher your craft, the better. So if you have 18 craft, you roll 3, the total will be 18. If you've got 666, then you minus that, you'll be at 0. Obviously, you kind of want to have at least 10 to try and go for the Crown of Command. Then your next square space you'll be going to is the Vampire's Tower, where you will suffer blood loss. And what you do is you roll 1 die to determine how many how many lives the vampire takes. But you can also discard a follower in place of a life. So remember, if you've got charmed animals, you will only use 1 in battle, and you probably don't need them when you're starting to go into the inner region. So you can use them as cannon fodder. So you can, if you roll a 1 to 2, you would lose 1 life. 3 to 4, you lose 2. 5 and 6, you lose 3 lives. Obviously, if you had 3 charmed animals, you could lose all those 3 and not lose any lives. And then the last square you'll be going to before the Crown of Command, apart from the Valley of Fire, remember you need a talisman as well, is the pits, and you'll be fighting the pit fiends. And basically, you roll 1 die and you fight that many pit fiends with a strength of 4. And then you fight them one by one until you defeat them, or you are defeated and killed totally. And then once you've done that, you then move into the Valley of Fire. And then if you've got a talisman, then you can move into the Crown of Command. So remember, strength is also a factor in this as well. So just a quick recap then, you draw as many adventure cards as you can for charming and also for trophies to cash them in for strength. Go to the ruins and the oasis, and I should also say for craft as well, that's trophies, strength and craft. So go to the ruins, go to oasis and go to the hidden valley. Also land on the players who have the maiden and princess if they come out, and you should visit the chapel to heal up your lives for free. Never go down below. When you get on 1, heal up your lives again. Go to the crags to gain strength, go to the forest to gain craft, and also go to the city to try your luck at the enchant chest. You've got a 50-50 chance. Remember, you use your fate wisely as well. You do get 5. And I would recommend going the craft route, which is the mines through the inner region. And there we are. That has been the Minstrel, and hopefully that is hints and tips to help you claim the crown of command. The Minstrel, yes, the Minstrel from the Talisman, 4th revised edition. Now, a lot of people can underestimate the Minstrel because you think, oh, well, look at him, he's just got a lute, he's just playing music. But no, I've won with the Minstrel, and I used the charm ability brilliantly. Everything that I could charm, I did charm. I had loads of followers, and then you can just use them to gain that advantage in the battles, and also, yeah, use them as cannon fodder. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this character guide, as I say, we have done some more of those. We do have a playlist of everything Talisman, so if you just want to binge watch the Talisman playlist. We've got all the base game review, we've also got every single expansion reviewed, and we'll be continuing with the base game character guides until we do all of them, and then we're probably going to be going on to the expansions as well. That's our plan, is to cover every character in the Talisman game. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, remember to keep it real, especially if you charm animals.
Is it real or unreal?
Keep it unreal. Keep it real. If you're a minstrel, what would you do? Would you keep it real? I guess music is real.
Revels.
Keep it revel.